Welcome to Beyond the Call, Medal of Honor Stories, the podcast where we bring you powerful, true accounts of courage, leadership, and sacrifice from America's greatest military heroes. I'm your host, and today we're sharing the story of a man who turned chaos into command, First Lieutenant Harold Fritz. What would you do if your vehicle was on fire, you were bleeding from multiple wounds, and your soldiers were surrounded by a superior enemy force? For Harold Fritz, the answer was simple: stand up, take charge, and fight. On January 11, 1969, amid the violent throes of the Vietnam War, First Lieutenant Harold A. Fritz found himself thrust into a life-or-death struggle against overwhelming odds. As an armored cavalry officer commanding a column near Quan Loy, South Vietnam, Fritz and his men were caught in a devastating ambush that could have spelled annihilation. Demonstrating remarkable courage and tenacity, Fritz not only rallied his severely wounded soldiers, but repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire, ultimately leading a desperate but victorious stand against a numerically superior force. For these selfless and heroic actions, Harold Fritz was awarded the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration. "I knew my men depended on me," Fritz later recounted. "Fear was there, but duty spoke louder." This resolve was evident in every moment of the fierce firefight as Fritz, ignoring grave wounds, personally directed counterattacks and inspired his soldiers to fight beyond their limits. His leadership and bravery under fire not only changed the tide of the engagement, but also provided an enduring example of self-sacrifice and devotion to duty. You can find more Medal of Honor stories, military history features, and extended resources by visiting trackpads.com, where we are armored in facts and driven by stories. Historical context. The Vietnam War, a deeply controversial conflict, defined a generation and tested the resolve of both nations involved. Emerging from Cold War tensions, the United States entered Vietnam with the primary goal of halting the spread of communism across Southeast Asia, fearing a domino effect if Vietnam fell. By 1969, the year of Harold Fritz's heroic action, the war had intensified significantly, with American troops involved in grueling and often inconclusive jungle warfare. The war was characterized by unconventional guerrilla tactics from the Viet Cong and well-coordinated conventional military operations from the North Vietnamese Army, which posed severe challenges for American forces. One pivotal aspect of the conflict was the Tet Offensive in 1968, which, despite resulting in a tactical military defeat for the North Vietnamese, dramatically shifted American public opinion against the war. Following Tet, the North Vietnamese intensified operations to exploit perceived weaknesses in American resolve, leading to increased engagements and casualties in battles throughout 1969. This critical juncture heightened the strategic importance of ground actions, placing intense pressure on soldiers at the tactical level, including those like Fritz and his cavalry regiment. In the context of armored warfare, the role of cavalry units, such as the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment in which Fritz served, was crucial. Known colloquially as the Black Horse Regiment, these armored units operated tanks, armored personnel carriers, and reconnaissance vehicles in challenging terrain, providing vital mobility, reconnaissance, and firepower support in offensive and defensive missions. Cavalry operations were essential for disrupting enemy supply lines, engaging entrenched positions, and conducting rapid reaction maneuvers to support embattled units. The geopolitical stakes were immense, with both superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, watching closely, each backing opposing sides in a proxy confrontation reflective of the broader Cold War rivalry. Additionally, regional dynamics involving neighboring Laos and Cambodia complicated matters, as North Vietnam utilized these nations for supply routes and staging areas, widening the theater of operations. This geopolitical complexity meant that each engagement, such as the battle involving Fritz unit, was part of a larger narrative with implications beyond the immediate battlefield. For soldiers like Harold Fritz and his men, these sweeping geopolitical considerations were secondary to survival and mission accomplishment. Yet their individual actions often shaped larger outcomes by affecting morale, public perception, and strategic calculations. The battle near Quan Loy therefore represented not only a desperate fight for survival, but also a microcosm of the broader conflict, reflecting both the courage and challenges faced by American troops during this tumultuous era. Personal background. Harold Arthur Fritz was born on February 21, 1944, in Chicago, Illinois. Growing up, Fritz had a passion for animals and initially planned to become a veterinarian, a dream temporarily put on hold when he received his draft notice in 1966. Accepting the call to service, Fritz joined the United States Army, eventually becoming an officer through the Officer Candidate School and receiving a commission as a first lieutenant as a private first. Assigned to the prestigious 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, Fritz quickly earned respect from both peers and superiors for his leadership abilities and tactical acumen. Following his distinguished combat service in Vietnam, Harold Fritz continued his career in the Army, eventually reaching the rank of lieutenant colonel before retiring after 27 years of dedicated service. In his civilian life, Fritz has remained committed to supporting veterans, notably working at the Department of Veterans Affairs Bob Michel Outpatient Clinic in Peoria, Illinois. His lifelong dedication to duty, both military and civilian, underscores the depth of his character and his enduring commitment to serving those who serve their nation. Medal of Honor citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, Captain, then First Lieutenant Fritz Armour, U.S. Army, distinguished himself while serving as a platoon leader with Troop A near Quan Lo. Captain Fritz was leading his 7-vehicle armored column along Highway 13 to meet and escort a truck convoy when the column suddenly came under intense crossfire from a reinforced enemy company deployed in ambush positions. In the initial attack, Cap Fritz's vehicle was hit and he was seriously wounded. Realizing that his platoon was completely surrounded, vastly outnumbered, and in danger of being overrun, Capture Fritz leapt to the top of his burning vehicle and directed the positioning of his remaining vehicles and men. With complete disregard for his wounds and safety, he ran from vehicle to vehicle in complete view of the enemy gunners in order to reposition his men, to improve the defenses, to assist the wounded, to distribute ammunition, to direct fire, and to provide encouragement to his men. When a strong enemy force assaulted the position and attempted to overrun the platoon, Cap Fritz manned a machine gun and through his exemplary action, inspired his men to deliver intense and deadly fire, which broke the assault and routed the attackers. Moments later, a second enemy force advanced to within 2 meters of the position and threatened to overwhelm the defenders. Captain Fritz, armed only with a pistol and bayonet, led a small group of his men in a fierce and daring charge which routed the attackers and inflicted heavy casualties. When a relief force arrived, Cap Fritz saw that it was not deploying effectively against the enemy positions, and he moved through the heavy enemy fire to direct its deployment against the hostile positions. This deployment forced the enemy to abandon the ambush site and withdraw. Despite his wounds, Cap Fritz returned to his position, assisted his men, and refused medical attention until all of his wounded comrades had been treated and evacuated. The extraordinary courage and selflessness displayed by Captain Fritz, at the repeated risk of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, were in keeping with the highest traditions of the U.S. Army and reflect greatest credit upon himself, his unit, and the armed forces. The Battle and Medal of Honor actions. On the morning of January 11, 1969, First Lieutenant Harold A. Fritz was leading an armored platoon from Troop A, 1st Squadron, 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment along Highway 13 near Quan Lo, Vietnam. The mission was routine: escort a convoy of supply trucks safely through hostile territory. However, without warning, the seemingly calm surroundings erupted into chaos as Fritz's 7-vehicle column fell into a devastating ambush orchestrated by a well-entrenched and heavily armed North Vietnamese force. The enemy unleashed a barrage of rocket-propelled grenades, machine gun fire, and small arms, immediately crippling Fritz's lead vehicle and wounding him severely in the initial exchange. Despite suffering serious injuries, Fritz quickly grasped the dire situation facing his unit. Bleeding and stunned by the suddenness of the attack, he wasted no time. Ignoring his wounds and the intense enemy fire sweeping the area, he leapt onto the burning hull of his armored vehicle to gain visibility over the chaotic scene. With remarkable clarity and composure, Fritz directed the remaining vehicles and soldiers to form a defensive perimeter, a strategic move critical to their survival amidst the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Recognizing the perilous shortage of firepower and ammunition facing his men, Fritz again defied his injuries and dashed through intense enemy fire to redistribute ammunition and reinforce his unit's resolve. He personally manned a machine gun mounted on his burning armored personnel carrier, providing suppressive fire that held the attacking enemy at bay. His fearless demeanor under fire significantly boosted the morale of his embattled soldiers, empowering them to fiercely resist repeated enemy attempts to overrun their position. In a critical moment, an enemy soldier broke through the perimeter and threatened to destabilize their fragile defense from within. Reacting instantly, Fritz engaged the attacker in close-quarters combat, successfully neutralizing the immediate threat and preventing further breaches of their defensive line. His decisive actions at this crucial juncture prevented chaos within the ranks, enabling his men to maintain an organized and effective resistance against relentless enemy assaults. As the brutal firefight stretched on, Fritz remained the embodiment of resolute leadership, constantly moving between positions despite his worsening wounds. His relentless encouragement and tactical direction galvanized his troops, ultimately transforming what had initially seemed a hopeless situation into a remarkable defensive stand. Under his inspired leadership, the soldiers of Troop A not only held their ground but managed to repulse repeated attacks, inflicting significant casualties on the enemy force. Fritz's extraordinary heroism under fire, relentless courage, and steadfast dedication to his soldiers were instrumental in turning the tide of the battle. His leadership not only ensured the survival of his men, but also delivered a tactical victory against significant enemy forces, demonstrating the profound impact that a single individual's bravery and determination can have, even in the most dire and desperate circumstances. Reflections and lessons learned. Harold Fritz's extraordinary actions on that harrowing day near Quan Loi embody essential lessons in leadership, resilience, and duty. His ability to remain composed and decisive in the face of chaos demonstrates the power of clarity and quick decision-making in crisis situations. Leaders today, whether in military, business, or personal endeavors, can draw inspiration from Fritz's unwavering presence of mind, reminding us that even amid extreme adversity, calm determination can shift outcomes dramatically. Moreover, Fritz's willingness to personally shoulder risks to protect and inspire his men exemplifies the ethical foundation of genuine leadership. By repeatedly placing himself directly in harm's way, he reinforced a powerful lesson. True leaders prioritize the welfare and morale of those they command above their own safety. Fritz's actions reinforce the timeless principle that authentic leadership is not merely about issuing orders, but rather about setting a personal example, embodying the courage, sacrifice, and integrity one wishes to see in others. In today's rapidly evolving world where uncertainty and crisis frequently challenge organizations and communities alike, the example set by Harold Fritz remains profoundly relevant. His story encourages us all to embrace responsibility, to face our fears, and to act decisively in the interests of others. Whether in the context of military operations, corporate leadership, or personal development, Fritz's heroism illustrates vividly that acts of courage and leadership resonate far beyond the battlefield, shaping legacies and inspiring future generations. Harold Fritz's exceptional bravery and leadership during one of the Vietnam War's fiercest engagements serve as a timeless reminder of the extraordinary power of courage and selflessness. His actions on that fateful day near Quan Loi not only saved the lives of his fellow soldiers, but also offered invaluable lessons in perseverance and leadership under pressure. Stay tuned for our next installment of Beyond the Call, where we continue to share stories of Medal of Honor recipients whose valor and commitment continue to inspire. Don't forget to subscribe and share these powerful stories, ensuring that acts of heroism like that of Harold Fritz continue to resonate with future generations.